Let us pray. Our Father, we thank you for your abundant blessings to our province, our country, and ourselves. We ask you to ensure to us your guidance and the will to follow it. Amen.
Introduction of visitors. Presenting petitions. Reading and receiving petitions.
Calgary McKnight.
Mr. Speaker, I request leave to ask that the petitions tabled on behalf of all teachers by the members of the Liberal caucus be read and received at this time.
We, the undersigned, as professional staff members of various schools, urge the Legislative Assembly of Alberta to accord favorable consideration to the following resolution adopted by teacher representatives at the Emergent Representative Assembly of the Alberta Teachers Association on September 28, 1991. Be it resolved that the Alberta Teachers Association return to negotiations with the government with a view to concluding a new agreement in which A, teachers and the government jointly contribute the full amount of all future service costs to the Teachers' Retirement Fund. B, the government assumes full responsibility for the total unfunded liability related to past service costs and adopts an acceptable plan for retiring that debt. C, the government amends the TRF Act to provide full cost of living adjustment to pensions. And D, the other changes incorporated in the May 4th, 1991 Memorandum of Understanding are retained. Presenting reports by standing and special committees. Notices of motions.
Quentin Goldbar.
Mr. Speaker, I beg leave to give notice that under Standing Order 40, I will ask for unanimous consent to propose the following motion. Be it resolved that this Legislative Assembly urge the government to provide interim health care measures to ensure residents of Peerless Lake and Trout Lake have access to an adequate level of health care service until such time as the matter is resolved between the province and the federal government.
Okay, stick around.
Introduction of bills. Tabling returns and reports.
Minister of Consumer and Corporate Affairs.
I'm pleased to table the Automotive Insurance Board annual report for the year ending December 31st, 91.
Associate Minister of Agriculture.
Speaker, it is my pleasure to table the annual report of the Alberta Agricultural Research Institute for the year ended March 31st, 91, and the Farming for the Future Progress Report for the year 1991.
Okay. Additional.
Introduction of special guests.
Minister of Economic Development and Trade.
To introduce to you and through you to members of the Legislative Assembly a number of future leaders from the constituency of Sherwood Park. They are the Mills Haven 12th Guide Company, They're joined by their group leaders, Mrs. Doris Corpesso, Mrs. Peggy Moore, and Mrs. Kay Day. They're in the members gallery, and I would ask if they would all rise to receive the warm welcome of this Legislative Assembly. Mr. Speaker, I also have another group, and it's my pleasure, sir, to introduce you and through you to members of the Legislative Assembly, 33 members of the Edmonton's First Probus Club. Probus Clubs, Mr. Speaker, are sponsored by Rotary Clubs and are for the retired professional and businessmen of our community. This group is sponsored by the West Edmonton Rotary Club and was formed in September of 1991. These leaders have provided a great deal of direction to our province and to our city, and I would ask that they rise. They're seated in the public gallery so that all members can express our appreciation to them.
Minister of Tourism, Parks and Recreation, followed by the Minister of Public Works, Supply and Services.
Mr. Speaker, it's a pleasure to introduce to you and through you to the members of the Legislative Assembly a group of grade 9 students from the Leduc Junior High School in Leduc. These 6 students are accompanied by Mr. Greg Fetter and are seated in the public gallery. I would ask that they rise and receive the warm welcome of the Assembly.
Minister of Public Works, Supply and Services.
Mr. Speaker, the members' gallery today are 35 young students of Swan Hill School, and they're accompanied today by 2 teachers, Mr. Ralph Lemaire and Ms. Susan Bosefield, and 6 parent helpers as well, Mrs. Berglund, Mrs. McDougall, Mrs. Joyce, Mrs. Yagas, Mrs. Muchler, and Mr. Ritchie. Mr. Speaker, Swan Hills is a very famous locale in the province of Alberta, and I'd ask our guests to rise and receive the warm welcome of the Assembly.
Minister of Education.
Here in our gallery today is a Calgary Shaw constituent, Mrs. Uta Davies. Mrs. Davies has served on the Social Care Facilities Review Committee for the last number of years, and I'd ask her to stand and have all honourable members express their appreciation for her several years of service.
Ministerial statements. Oral question period.
Leader of the Opposition.
Yes, Mr. Speaker, yesterday we learned from the Minister of Energy that natural resource revenues are down $1.2 billion from what the Treasurer predicted in last year's budget. Now, Mr. Speaker, frankly, this doesn't surprise anyone that's followed what happened last year. As I said many times, this was a PR political budget so that they could say they had a balanced budget going into their convention, right, Mr. Speaker. But there are some other revenues estimated in the budget, Mr. Speaker, and after yesterday's revelation, it appears the government wants to reveal information in the budget in bits and pieces. So, Mr. Speaker, let's take a look at corporate tax revenue, estimated to be $900 million in last year's budget. My question to the Treasurer is simply this. Will the Treasurer tell us, this House, how far out his projections of corporate tax revenue are?
Mr. Speaker, what we had said yesterday, and the question to my colleague, the Minister of Energy, was that all Albertans understand that the budget and to some extent the economy of Alberta is driven by oil and gas prices, and certainly in the last year our budget was based on some assumptions about energy prices, both oil and gas. And we did find that the gas prices dropped more rapidly than anyone had forecast, and as my colleague pointed out, that has hit our revenue base for the province in 1991. Mr. Speaker, we'll be prepared to provide a full update as to the other revenue sources over the course of the next few days here when the budget is presented. And, Mr. Speaker, I think we'll have an opportunity to dissect, if the member from Norwood so wishes, all of the elements there. But I know that one major signal will prevail on the revenue side. That is that people of Alberta certainly have had more money than any other province in Alberta, in Canada. And as a consequence, we've had a very strong and dynamic income in the hands of the people. And really, that's one of the major objectives of this government, is protect the income of individuals in Alberta. And we've done that.
The government doesn't seem to realize we have a crisis, a financial crisis here. They come in and yammer about a balanced budget, spend taxpayers' money, and now they're saying, well, they couldn't predict it. Almost everybody except them was last year, Mr. Speaker. And what we're talking about is honesty to the people of Alberta. Yesterday, you said there was $1.2 million. I'm asking today in the legislature what the rest of the damage is. And would the minister now confirm that the deficit will be, because of the lack of revenues, will be close to at least $2 billion, Mr. Speaker?
More like it.
Mr. Speaker, the member from Norwood gets hot and bothered when it comes to identifying his question. There's no crisis in Alberta, Mr. Speaker. Far from it. Far from it. The crisis is in the member's mind entirely. Mr. Speaker, what has happened here is that the province of Alberta has presented a very cautious plan, which was essentially forced on us by the change in world price on oil in 1986-87. And as I said yesterday, in a cautious and even-handed approach, we took the province of Alberta's fiscal position from 86-87 through to last year on a very careful basis, measuring that we would not reduce our expenditures and cause difficulties in the health and education system, but control overall our expenditures, would not level the taxes against Albertans, Mr. Speaker, so that they had the disposable income in their hands to make their choices with their dollars, and to manage through that, Mr. Speaker, with the fundamental strength which this province has, in part accounted for by the strength of Albertans, the strength of the economic position of Alberta, and the resources which we have, including oil and gas and the Heritage Fund savings, Mr. Speaker. That's the plan. That's how it happened. There's no crisis, and the crisis in the mind of the member from Norwood.
Final.
If that was a cautious plan last year, I'd hate to see them when they get reckless, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, the problem is the dishonesty of this government, Mr. Speaker. Last year, they said they had a balanced budget and came in June and asked the province's debt ceiling to be raised by $2 billion, Mr. Speaker. We made the case in, Mr. Speaker, and the Treasurer knew full well at that particular time that that budget that he gave was nonsense. That's why we had to raise the ceiling. And my question to the Treasurer, will he finally now admit they knew all along that the budget wasn't balanced and they would have a deficit of close to $2 billion? That's why we raised the debt line, Mr. Speaker.
Right.
Mr. Speaker, the member gets this anxiety attack, and he gets hot and flustered and loses control, Mr. Speaker. As the Premier said yesterday, it's typical of the acting school all socialist leaders must have gone to. He throws his papers around and huffs and puffs and explains some calamitous position which doesn't exist. Mr. Speaker, what we have here through the course of this year, Mr. Speaker, as I've said before, we have a very strong economic position. I have related to Albertans the strength of this position, and the strength of that position is because people believe that there's a predictable investment situation in Alberta where dollars can be at home in new investments, where people feel their capital is safe, Mr. Speaker, and safe from taxes, Mr. Speaker, additional taxes which the socialist governments would always levy, Mr. Speaker, and a climate where investment is attractive, where investment is welcome, and where jobs are created, Mr. Speaker. That's the way in which we have even-handedly managed this economy over the past 5 years, and that's exactly how we'll handle it over the decade ahead.
To the opposition.
The Treasurer, you're right. I'm having an anxiety attack. I'm afraid they're not going to call an election. We'll be more in debt, Mr. Speaker. But, Mr. Speaker, back to the Treasurer. We have the worst of all worlds. A burgeoning deficit, high unemployment, more and more jobless, Mr. Speaker. And I want to tell them that municipalities around the province live in fear of this government's mismanagement of Alberta's finances. Mr. Speaker, the Alberta Municipal Financing Corporation has a $300 million surplus, Mr. Speaker. Now, I expect that this provincial government is eyeing it to deal with their burgeoning deficit, Mr. Speaker. But if not, Mr. Speaker, if I'm wrong, will the Treasurer assure this Assembly that the $300 million in the Municipal Financial Corporation will be paid out directly to local authorities?
Hear, hear.
Mr. Speaker, as I've said in the House before, the Alberta Municipal Financing Corporation Board of Directors has considered this issue. It's on the public record already. As I understand it, the board has deferred that issue, Mr. Speaker, and I suppose it'll be under consideration at some point in the future.
Some point in the future, probably in the next budget, Mr. Speaker, I would think, whenever they get the courage to bring it in. But, Mr. Speaker, I want to say to the Treasurer that $300 million could be used by municipalities to create jobs at the local level instead of used by the Treasurer to boost his revenues, Mr. Speaker. And I want to ask the Treasurer simply this: why wouldn't the government give this $300 million to the municipalities so they could put people back to work?
Good idea.
Well, Mr. Speaker, I assume he's making a statement. I'm not asking a question. If the member from Norwood is outlining for us and confirming what this province has already done, that is to say, to make massive investments in infrastructure in this province, investments which are unmatched anywhere in Canada, which in fact also provide a support for private sector investment in this province, investment which the Premier outlines should include not just streets and roads and sewer and water systems, which are, by comparison, at the best level in Alberta, but also infrastructure in information technologies, which takes us into the future, then of course we are of one accord, because we do agree that should be an objective, and that's what we have done by investing in these facilities over the past few years by major and significant transfers to our local partnership friends and municipal governments, and schools and hospitals and local governments. We have done just that, Mr. Speaker. So on that point, I'm glad to see that the member from Norwood is confirming the Conservative Party's policy of the past decade.
Albertans don't find the Treasurer amusing with the tired old rhetoric about the best in Canada, the best in the world, the best in the universe, Mr. Speaker. Let's get real. We're talking about the $300 million here, Mr. Speaker. And I want to ask the Treasurer, isn't it simply this, what's going to happen, that this government's going to grab that money from the municipalities to deceive Albertans about the true picture of our burgeoning deficit? That's what they're going to do, isn't it, Mr. Speaker?
Well, Mr. Speaker, since the member recognizes the strengths of Alberta and lists them off, perhaps I could start by listing my worst case scenarios for the member across the way, which would, well, I won't do it, Mr. Speaker. I simply won't get into that sort of narrow-minded rhetoric which the member from Norwood likes to pursue. Let me say, Mr. Speaker, that we have had representations from the municipalities with respect to the AMFC surplus. This surplus, Mr. Speaker, has accumulated in the AMFC. I noticed the member from Glengarry says that it's included in our debt calculation by his own estimates, Mr. Speaker, and that should be on the record. Mr. Speaker, we also have had into consideration ways in which we can look at a variety of ways to examine more fairly the transfers to municipalities, and we've had a series of representations on that side. And the Premier, as a matter of fact, has set up a council to look at ways in which the transfers between municipalities, using the limited resources which the province has, and recognizing the needs and dynamic needs which the municipalities will see in the future. We now have under consideration a series of policies which would examine just that. And I'll take it as information from the member as opposed to exchanging sharp barbs with Mr. Speaker.
Edmonton Glengarry, on behalf of the Liberal Party.
Mr. Speaker, from the time that the Treasurer took responsibility for his portfolio to the end of March of 1992, the Treasurer has miscalculated energy revenues by $2.5 billion. That's negatively miscalculated.
Shame.
Most experts last year told us that we would not see the price of oil that the Treasurer was predicting. I'd like to know from the Minister where he continues to get his bad information.
Well, Mr. Speaker, it is in fact a matter of record that our oil price forecast has been right 3 times out of 5. That's batting 600. Far better than the member's record.
Mr. Speaker, $2.5 billion of miscalculation. A likely better than billion-dollar deficit this year. That's not a good track record. And based on that track record, I'd like to ask the Minister what process the Minister is putting into place to ensure that this kind of phony baloney figures aren't put forward to Albertans in the next budget.
Mr. Speaker, the member from Norwood obviously comes from the same school of crisis, where in fact the only focus and the only result of his outlandish statements is in fact that he himself does not know what the solutions are. Let me assure you, Mr. Speaker, that the Conservative Party of Alberta, under our leader, the Premier of Alberta, has the solutions in mind. We have presented a plan already, Mr. Speaker, which has taken this province of Alberta through a very difficult period. And we have, as a matter of fact, said to Albertans that we have had to rely on oil and gas revenues for some time. It's the way in which we built the foundation of this province from 70 to 1984, 85. And we have now faced that changing situation, Mr. Speaker. Nonetheless, we have made some adjustments accordingly. And the major adjustments we have made, Mr. Speaker, are in fact twofold. We have said to Albertans that a reasonable amount of debt should be in everybody's business plan. I mean, even the member from Glengarry must have a visa that he uses from time to time. Home, families, mortgage income, Mr. Speaker, to pay for a house. And the government, in the same sort of even-handed manner, has used the borrowing power that we have to manage our way through so we can maintain the services without increasing taxes. So we have had to do that, Mr. Speaker, and we have had to examine the reliance on oil. And right now, as the member of Energy has pointed out in this House, our reliance on oil has reduced from 50% of our total revenues in about 1981 to less than 20% this current year. At the same time, we have diversified the economy, generated more jobs, Mr. Speaker, and in fact have increased our overall economic...
Thank you. Final, Edmonton Glengarry.
Speaker, for years the provincial treasurer has refused to supply information to Albertans on the underlying price of natural gas. Now that we're going to have freedom of information, will the minister commit to providing that information when he brings down his next budget?
Mr. Speaker, I think it's a fair comment from the member from Glengarry to say that perhaps we should be more clear with the price of natural gas and the assumptions we use there. I'll make just two general comments. First of all, it's very difficult to find a universal and, if you like, readily understandable price for natural gas. Those people who are in the industry will tell you that there are at least 4 or 5 different prices that may be commonly referenced. What we have done, Mr. Speaker, and in fact what we have said to Albertans, is that the price of crude oil, as measured in U.S. dollars off the New York mercantile market, is in fact a reasonable proxy for our total Alberta royalty revenues. And I think, Mr. Speaker, in fact, that was the problem last year. We said to Albertans we have a fairly good profile and forecast on the oil price, but we did not expect that the price of natural gas would fall as rapidly as it has. And as we have said clearly, Mr. Speaker, natural gas constitutes at least 50% of our total revenue. And I think the member is quite fair in suggesting to us that we should focus on now a two-price system, one for oil and one for natural gas, Mr. Speaker, and I'll take that under advisement.
Slave Lake, followed by Edmonton Avonmore.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. It's been almost a month since the Peerless Trout and Chipewyan Lake communities have experienced a horrible setback. That is the federal government's move to stop paying for doctors flying into the community. They don't need any more setbacks, Mr. Speaker. This decision was made arbitrarily, putting people's lives in peril. Many people are affected by this ridiculous move, Mr. Speaker. Would the Minister of Health review for the House and my constituents any updates in her discussions with the federal government?
Mr. Speaker, as I've said before, I am very concerned about the way that the federal government has treated not only the residents of Peerless Trout and Chipewyan Lakes, but indeed the way they have treated their fellow governments. I would have expected, particularly given the Federal Minister of National Health and Welfare's record of collaboration with health ministers across Canada, a little better treatment from this minister. Nonetheless, my department, upon hearing of the unilateral withdrawal of medical service flights, contacted health and welfare federal officials in Alberta and asked them if they could continue with the funding of the flights until we had worked out an interim solution. They refused to do that. I have written to the federal minister and have expressed my deepest concern about the conduct of the federal government's officials and the unacceptability of any further withdrawal unilaterally of services in northern Alberta. I know the matter is being classified as a dispute between governments, and yet governments fund billions of dollars worth of health services in this country, and the delivery of health services in Canada is based on a partnership. And in a partnership, I don't believe it's right that one partner unilaterally withdraw their services at their whim when it is affecting access to health services, which is a basic tenet of the Canada Health Act.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I was there on Saturday in those communities, Mr. Speaker, and the people are frightened and the leaders angry. Mr. Speaker, my people need help immediately, as well not only for short-term plans, but for long-term resolutions to the health issue. Has the minister come to any conclusions for a resolution on an interim basis to take care of the people in my constituency who need help from these communities?
Don't vote for it.
Mr. Speaker, I share the concern of the honourable member for Slave Lake, even if some members of the federal government do not. And I don't believe that the people of these communities should have to suffer while there's a dispute between the two levels of jurisdiction and funding, and therefore I have instructed my department to appropriately cost share flights on an interim basis until an alternative arrangement can be worked out.
Edmonton Avamore, followed by Calgary McKnight.
Mr. Speaker, my question is to the Minister of Health. Mr. Speaker, the chair of the Council on Professions and Occupations says that legalizing midwives in Alberta is going to be costly, but there will be numerous savings. For example, if midwives were involved in only 10% of normal deliveries in Alberta each year, the cost savings would be at least $4 million due to fewer and less intrusive interventions, less need for high-cost technology, and fewer or shorter hospital stays.
Good idea. Good idea.
Given that the cost of integrating midwives into the healthcare system would be recovered within the first year of implementation, and that the minister's own department has recommended that midwifery be designated and regulated, will the minister now commit to working with the chair of the council to immediately enact legislation and supporting structures to integrate midwives into the healthcare system?
Mr. Speaker, I work with the chair of the council and with many other colleagues around the legislature and our cabinet and our caucus table, including the Solicitor General, whose responsibility it is for professions and occupations legislation in the province. With respect to the cost issue which the honourable member has raised, I agree with her that on a procedure-by-procedure basis, the cost of midwives performing services is probably less expensive than a physician performing those services. But the manner in which that funding would occur is one that I think needs careful review, as the committee itself recognized, because we can't, I think, create a system where we are duplicating the funding of services in the healthcare insurance fund and some other mechanism. Nonetheless, I am committed and share the honourable member's interest in the issue, and in terms of a physician, it's clear from the report, the member will know that Alberta Health and its ministers supported in the report the professional designation, recognizing that implementation would take some time.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. My second question, Mr. Speaker, is to the minister responsible for women. Since 1988, the government has received inputs from hundreds of individuals and organizations on this issue and has issued 3 major reports, all recommending designation. Meanwhile, hundreds of women every year call the Association of Midwives asking for midwifery services in their communities. Will a minister now advocate on behalf of Alberta women and families for legislative designation and tell the Solicitor General that more studies are unnecessary and can only serve to hurt Alberta women and postpone health care cost savings?
Right on.
Mr. Speaker, yes. No equivocation, absolutely 100% agreed. I do believe there's been a little bit of a misunderstanding. In my discussions with the chair of the Professions and Occupations Bureau and the ministers involved, there has never been any intention to hang this report on the wall. There was and has been honoring a process, a collaborative process with all the stakeholders involved as they design what the future midwifery process will be in this province. As the member herself said yesterday, implementation, education, and regulations committees are needed, but it was thought best if we let the report be released as soon as possible and then moved in very shortly thereafter with the designation, knowing fully well that the committees in a collaborative process, as has been started, will continue and will take some time.
Speaker. Mr. Speaker, at a public meeting held in St. Albert this past winter, the Minister of Education made certain statements promising a solution by the end of February to the inequity in the funding of education in this province. 3 weeks ago, the Minister met with several groups of stakeholders to discuss the possible implementation of an interim plan, something he should have done 2 years ago, to the Minister of Education. When will the Minister make the decision needed to give hope to have-not school boards in this province?
Well, Mr. Speaker, an interim solution or a long-term solution has still not been attained because there is insufficient agreement among school boards as to the elements of a long-term solution. So in the meantime, Mr. Speaker, there is some $70 million of taxpayers' general revenue funding that is going to assist those school boards who lack access to an adequate tax base locally to pay for their share of the cost of education.
Speaker, I believe that's wonderful news, and I wish the Minister had made the news public sooner. However, I would like to ask him now how this decision will be arrived at, exactly what will be the parameters and the details of this implementation plan.
Well, Mr. Speaker, I'm glad that the honourable member has finally recognized that this government has, for the last number of years, been providing fiscal equity grants this year in the order of $69–70 million to assist those school boards who haven't got the tax base to pay for their local cost of education. And I'll tell you, Mr. Speaker, it's people like the honourable member across the other way who have stood as an obstacle in the way of achieving a long-term solution.
That's terrible.
All we hear from honourable members on the other side is our solution isn't good enough. It somehow stumbles on the toes of local autonomy. Well, Mr. Speaker, this government does believe in local autonomy, but it also believes in making sure that all students across this province have access to have fair access to an education that meets their needs. We're striving to find that solution, and it would be great, Mr. Speaker, if we could hear solutions rather than just definitions of problems from the other side of the House.
Whining Liberal.
Little Bow, followed by Edmonton Jasper Place. Order.
Mr. Speaker, my question is to the Minister of Agriculture. From the time a grain producer unloads his grain at the elevator, Mr. Speaker, there are approximately 17 different unions who affect the movement of his grain. We've heard a great deal the last few days, particularly about the grain handlers' strike at the West Coast. 19 people from one of these 17 unions are costing producers $1.3 million every day.
Shame.
Would the Minister please indicate to this Assembly what avenues are available to the producers and to the province to settle this strike immediately?
What happened to the NDs and BC?
Mr. Speaker, I think the honourable member has identified again the concern that farmers are feeling out there with the work stoppage at the Alberta Wheat Pool Terminal in Vancouver. What producers can do and what this government can do is simply make recommendations and lobby other groups to take certain actions. We've discussed in the House before the option of redirecting some of the grain through the Seattle port, which is certainly an action the Alberta Wheat Pool and the Canadian Wheat Board could take to get around this situation. One of our members suggested the other day maybe farmers going out and replacing those workers. Although I don't advocate that, that is certainly one suggestion that has been thrown out.
Longer-term solutions we've also discussed, but I'll be interested if there's any further recommendations.
Mr. Speaker, will the Minister of Agriculture show the producers in Alberta and the Western provinces that we cannot have our reputation as a reliable supplier of quality merchandise jeopardized by the action of these individuals at the West Coast by pushing his federal counterpart in Agriculture Canada to have these grain handlers designated an essential service?
Mr. Speaker, we have done that in past situations, and I'm prepared to make that as a formal representation in connection with this situation.
Mr. Jasper, please. Order.
Thank goodness for that. Mr. Speaker, the Grant Alberta project includes a sawmill in Manning, which would process softwood timber in what used to be Procter & Gamble's Northern Forest Management Agreement. It also includes a fine paper mill and a pulp mill, which would process hardwood from the southern Procter & Gamble area and possibly other areas in the district. I'd like to ask the Minister of Forestry, Lands and Wildlife about his statement yesterday that he's prepared to consider the timber supply on the northern area for the sawmill, but not at this time for the pulp mill and the paper mill in the southern area. This is from the minister who's been handing out FMAs like Valentine's for the last 3 years. Are you saying that you're prepared to jeopardize this project by not being able to make a decision in respect of that southern hardwood allocation?
Mr. Speaker, that's a good question. I'm pleased to have the opportunity to clear up any confusion. First of all, there is the sawmill at Manning was a commitment that was made by Procter & Gamble to build a sawmill at Manning, and they didn't fulfill that commitment. And so in meetings with the town of Manning, we called for proposals for a sawmill. The closing of the deadline for receiving proposals was March the 31st of 92. At that time, we received 4 proposals, one of which was Grand Alberta Paper. Grand Alberta Paper also yesterday announced that it was their intention to proceed through a process, and they've started in a phased process on a much larger project. But I have made it very clear to Grand Alberta Paper that we view the Manning sawmill as a standalone facility, and that we do intend to make a decision with respect to that sawmill likely in May, June period, and in that case it would be quotas.
Well, Mr. Speaker, where I come from, we have a little trouble understanding how you can go from being prepared to give away a third of the province in support of big companies that pollute and throw billions of dollars at them, and then when somebody comes along with a project that looks a little more sensible on the surface, that they're not able to make a decision. And I know the member for Slave Lake had trouble getting a decision out of this government in respect of the Polyboard project. So I wonder if the minister could explain whether he's kind of lost in terms of when he's going to make a decision on the project as a whole, or just what's going on here.
No, Mr. Speaker. It's the large project, the Grand Alberta Paper project, is one that will take much longer process to go through. It is one that needs to be reviewed by departments of the government to make sure that the confidence level is there, that they economically and environmentally it has a soundness to proceed. And also it will be, of course, on a project of that magnitude, will be subject to an environmental impact assessment, I'm sure, and then on to the NRCB. So it would take much longer on that part of a project. We want to make absolutely sure that any development that takes place in Alberta is done not only because we like to see economic development, but we want to make sure the environment's protected. And all the other resources in that region for a project of that magnitude, the wildlife and everything else needs to be taken into account as well. So that one, with respect to the larger project, is going to take a longer time, and the company accepts that, understands the process before they made announced their intentions, and have said that they have no difficulty with following that.
Edmonton Kingsway, then Edmonton Gold Bar.
Speaker, federal statistics announced yesterday show that the bankruptcies declared in Alberta in last month is up 33% from March of 1991. Whoa. The more than 700 consumers and businesses forced into bankruptcy in March is the most ever in the history of this province. To the provincial treasurer, given that the 1991 provincial budget contained no economic stimulative measures and in fact drastically cut job training, how can the treasurer deny that his phony balanced budget was short-sighted, irresponsible, and in fact contributed to the decline in the Alberta economy?
Budget contributed.
Mr.
Hold yourself. Hold back.
Speaker, I'm, as usual, trying to sort out the member's confused position, because it always is confusing, and moreover, it's misleading. What we have here in Alberta, Mr. Speaker, over the course of the past year, in Alberta has been one of the strongest economies in Canada. And I know it's difficult for the member across the way to believe that, because the reason it's happened, Mr. Speaker, is because the private sector, with their decision to invest in Alberta and to establish new assets here and to generate new jobs here, has allowed us to perform very well over the past year. Now, that doesn't hold with the view of the member across the way who believes that everything should be done by government, whose major thesis is take the government's money and spend, 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 and to balance that position, tax, tax, tax. That just is not the position of this government, Mr. Speaker, and no matter what they say across the way, we will not be allured into that trap, one of taxing capital, one of bringing on a sales tax, as the two parties advocate, Mr. Speaker. We'll have none of that nonsense, Mr. Speaker, none of that at all.
Answer the question.
Well, Mr. Speaker, the private sector has done all right. It's just government that's the problem. Albertans can't afford them anymore. Why is it that, as the Premier admitted yesterday, that even though this government woke up to the devastating economic situation late last year, that no measures were taken to help Albertans and reverse the trend to layoffs and bankruptcies?
Speaker, if the member wants to talk about other economic performance and does want to talk about the question of the private sector's bankruptcies, we can say that, in fact, for the first part of 1992, the bankruptcies or difficult financial situations in this province are far less than they were in 91. And that's a measure of the success of the private sector in this province. Despite what the member says, the private sector, the business side of our economy, is doing very well here in Alberta. And the reason that's happening, Mr. Speaker, is we have provided an opportunity, an economic environment for them to bring their investment dollars here, their creative opportunities here, and we have not taxed them away. We've allowed the private sector an opportunity to expand, to grow, and be welcome. And as a consequence of that, as I have said in the House before, Mr. Speaker, several measures which confirm the diversification of our economy are clear. Clear not just to Albertans, but to all of Canadians. That is, for example, that Albertans have the highest disposable income, as confirmed by the retail sales per capita. That we have a strong private sector here, Mr. Speaker, as confirmed by the amount of per capita investment, the highest in Canada, Mr. Speaker. And that we have an aggressive economy.
Thank you. Thank you, Provincial Treasurer. Member for Edmonton Goldbar, then Dunvegan.
Mr. Speaker, families of children with disabilities held a public meeting in Calgary to discuss cuts in education and handicapped children's services. Now, my questions are to the Minister of Family and Social Services, Mr. Speaker. We know that the report on the review on handicapped children's services is to be concluded in May. Will the Minister undertake to make that report public, as well as all of the raw data and comments that went into it?
Mr. Speaker, we are just completing an exhaustive consultative process. I'm looking forward to receiving the results of that, Mr. Speaker, and once I've had a chance to have a look at it, I'll determine what we'll be doing with the report at that point.
Mr. Speaker, it's very important to these parents that they see the information that goes into the recommendations. Mr. Speaker, I'd like to ask the Minister, is his real intention simply to narrow the mandate of handicapped children's services?
No, Mr. Speaker, not at all. As I've said before in this Legislative Assembly, we have an exceptional program providing services to handicapped children and to families of handicapped children. I really appreciate some of the positive response that I've received in my office as it relates to that particular program. But, Mr. Speaker, as is so often the case with this government, although we're doing good things and we're leading the nation in many, many ways, we recognize, Mr. Speaker, that we still want to be able to continue to build on those good things. And so, as I've said, we're going through a process of talking with parents, of talking with advocacy groups, of talking with service providers, police, municipal councillors, school board representation, Mr. Speaker. Hundreds of Albertans have responded to the opportunity that we've made available to discuss a very valuable program here in Alberta. I'm looking forward to the results. I'm looking forward to being able to build on those results, Mr. Speaker. And I think the member's suggestion for releasing that report is a good one, and I'll give it very serious consideration.
Followed by Edmonton Strathcona.
Well, thank you, Mr. Speaker. In 1991, the federal and the provincial government brought in a GRIP program after significant discussion with producers' groups throughout Alberta. This plan brought considerable stability to the agriculture industry. I personally know that first year in 40 years of farming that I knew what my income was going to be from the marketplace or from the crop insurance or the GRIP program. Does the Associate Minister plan on making significant plans to this GRIP program?
Mr. Speaker, the member certainly brings up an important issue to producers, and I think particularly timely with the decisions that they're making at seeding time. And he's absolutely correct in this government's commitment to a safety net program that is a tripartite program that protects producers on the revenue side of their cropping plans. And indeed, it is probably the first time that producers can go into the spring of the year with a seeding and have some assurance of revenue stability for that year. There has been some concern registered, I know that other members, rural members, have heard this, about changes to the revenue insurance program. Mr. Speaker, the Premier initiated a meeting with some 50 farm leaders and members of them last fall, and we had an intensive discussion of this program and many others. The support for the revenue insurance program was clear at that time, and I would say that today Alberta does not plan any significant change to the revenue insurance program this year. It will be offered very much on the same basis as last year, our interim year. And members will recall that I did mention last week a modification that we made in the indexed moving average price that will give producers a better support price for their grains this year. But that is the only change.
Well, thank you, Mr. Speaker. My supplementary questions, it's my understanding that the Saskatchewan government has made major changes to the GRIP program. It's my understanding that they claim, and I don't know whether it's right or not, but they claim that it will make it more market neutral. Have you had many requests from Alberta producers to request for the same changes that was made in Saskatchewan?
Well, Mr. Speaker, the member is indeed correct. Saskatchewan has introduced a significantly different program this year. And I suspect that may be causing some confusion in Alberta producers' minds as they read of these changes, because there have been some significant discussions in the province among farmers, some perhaps agreeing, but I understand many not. The question of market neutrality and production neutrality is a good debate, and we've had that in this House. But let's be clear that there will always be some trade-off and some need to balance on this issue. Our government's commitment to the agricultural industry in this program was to offer them some financial security on the price side of their program.
Minister, I'm sorry, we're getting into this problem of longer and longer answers, or they're being uttered slowly, and it also applies to some of the questions I acknowledge. Edmonton Strathcona, please.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. My questions are for the Minister of Consumer and Corporate Affairs. Section 17 of the Insurance Act requires that a representative of the Superintendent of Insurance annually, or at least once every year, audit every insurance agency or the head office of every insurance agency in the province in order to make inquiries necessary to ascertain whether or not all of the provisions of the Insurance Act had been complied with, and the results are then reported to the Minister. My question to the Minister is, would he advise the House as to the date of the last report to him with respect to bench insurance agencies, and whether or not the report noted the problems that have since arisen?
Mr. Speaker, with respect to bench insurance, the last report would be the one which indicated that bench insurance was inappropriately selling insurance policies and which recommended the freezing of assets and the withdrawal of the license from that particular agency. And that would have taken place but a few weeks ago.
Mr. Speaker, it's interesting that the previous reports don't seem to have said anything about it. In any event, it's a common complaint from the other side of the House that there are never any constructive solutions provided by this side of the House. It seems to me that it would be relatively simple and inexpensive for amendments to be made to the insurance legislation to prevent the type of fraud that was perpetrated here by a registration system to match the policies, the registered insurer, underwriter, and agent relationships, so that the consumer can tell whether the product is... Will the Minister tell the Assembly if he is prepared to introduce this kind of a registration system into the legislation at this sitting?
Mr. Speaker, actually, to be fair on this particular issue, I've heard a couple of good ideas from the opposition, ideas that should be considered when we've completed an evaluation of this particular instance. As I'm sure the member can appreciate, we're now in the midst of the investigation with the RCMP. As soon as we have completed that, we'll be in a position to evaluate further our relatively new insurance council system and see if those kind of suggestions are worthy of further consideration.
Time for question period has expired, and I'm certain that all honorable members are aware that we didn't get through as many questions as we have been doing. Part of that has to do with the heckling that's starting to develop again, and I'm sure that will stop as of tomorrow. Also the matter, some members, and the chair has taken the liberty of speaking directly to one or two members. You really have to shorten your questions or speed up the way that you're saying them. And the same thing applies to a couple of the ministers as well. Please and thank you. Thank you very much, honorable member. You're to be quiet while the chair is speaking. Please remember that. Honorable member, that includes you as well, West Lux Region. Now, because of some comments made in an earlier question period, I've had a request from the member for Edmonton Kingsway to make a statement to the House. If you would do so, please.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. One slight correction. It wasn't a question period. It was comments made during debate, I think, on the speech from the throne or the interim supply bills. On two occasions, in fact, on March 26th and on March 30th, 1992, I spoke in this legislature about how Deshawa Canada Company Limited had been charged by Revenue Canada as having sold their pulp cheaply to their parent company in Japan so they could avoid paying taxes here in Canada. That was a mistake. There is another company in a dispute with Revenue Canada about taxation policy, and I thought it was Deshawa Canada. I regret the error I made, and I apologize to Deshawa Canada for any embarrassment my mistake might have caused them. I will be writing to them to apologize and send them a handwritten copy of these comments.
proceed to Standing Order 40 request. I understand the member for Edmonton Avonmore has an introduction which may or may not apply on behalf of the member for Edmonton Beverly. Edmonton Avonmore.
Mr. Speaker, on behalf of the member for Edmonton Beverly, I would like to introduce to you and through you to members of this Assembly 25 visitors from the East Edmonton Christian School. They are accompanied by Mr. Alan Dreke, Mrs. Van Essen, Mrs. Bonstra, and Mrs. Tabek. If they are in the public gallery, I would ask that they stand and receive the welcome of this Assembly. Take their seats.
Thank you. Edmonton Goldbar, respect to Standing Order 40, urgency.
Mr. Speaker, I rise to propose the motion that has been circulated, I believe, under Standing Order 40, to ask for unanimous consent to deal with this motion. Mr. Speaker, I recognize that this problem has generated a number of questions and answers already in this Assembly, but while some of the questions have been answered or commented on, the situation of real risk remains, in my view. Mr. Speaker, we're talking about long-range plans as well as short-range plans.
She's leaving.
Yes. Mr. Speaker, I appreciate the minister's dilemma in this regard. It's difficult to say whether if we put an interim plan in place that may in fact stall negotiations, or the federal government who caused this problem may believe that they don't have to deal with it because something is there. But I still say that Albertans want some kind of interim solution as we try to rearrange the situation with the federal government. Mr. Speaker, I don't presume to suggest to the minister what can happen here. She has indicated today that they're going to cost-share flights of doctors in, but it seems to me that a nursing team on the site might be able to be a great deal more help to the citizens of those communities to provide immediate diagnosis and offer ideas to the doctors on the outside who could send the prescriptions in. It is urgent, Mr. Minister, I assure you.
That's urgent, all right.
Mr. Speaker, the citizens in those towns and communities are under a great deal of strain, under a great risk. Mr. Speaker, I don't believe that simply flying a doctor in once or twice a week is the answer to this very serious question. I think we need a contingency plan. I think we need professionals on site in order to develop a plan on site as opposed to developing one here in Edmonton. My motion, Mr. Speaker, simply asks for interim action to relieve this current stressful situation and the very risky circumstances that persist in these communities unless we here in this House agree to do something about it.
You're here.
For the, just a reminder to all members, as well as for the benefit of people that happen to be watching on television, that under Standing Order 40, it's not the matter of the motion that is before the House, it's a matter of urgency. All those members willing to give unanimous consent for the matter to proceed, please say aye. Aye. Opposed, please say no. No. The matter of urgency fails. Orders of the day. Orders of the day.
And orders for second reading. Bill number 2, Mr. Tanis.
Member for Highwood.
Mr. Speaker, I'm pleased to move second reading of Bill number 2, the Historical Resources Amendment Act, 1992. These amendments will facilitate the merger of two boards, the Alberta Historical Resources Foundation and the Alberta Historic Sites Board. The Alberta Historical Resources Foundation will be increased from 11 to 13 directors, and the Historic Sites Board will be discontinued. Mr. Speaker, I'd like to summarize a few points on the second reading. First of all, the changes being asked for in this bill